welcome to the VSCPA's podcast, Leading Forward. Today we are with Anne Hagen, CEO of the Masonic Home, and we're also in our brand new media room. We have this awesome setup, so we are really excited to be getting a little more professional. So thank you, Anne. It's really fun to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for inviting me.
Yeah. So Anne is our chair of the VSCPA board, so she has been pulling double duty with her full-time job and with her volunteer job. So you've been a busy person so far. But before we dive into the podcast and to your story, tell us a little bit about what Masonic Home is.
Well, Masonic Home of Virginia is a continuing care retirement community. It actually started out as a home for children back in 1890.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been around over 130 years. And in the 70s, it was very proactive in terms of knowing that there was a need for a home for seniors. And so they began that. And so we've probably served over 1,200 adults and almost 900 children in our existence. So it's a fascinating nonprofit that serves Virginia.
Yeah. So Anne, I really want to focus on what your experience has been over the last 18 months because you have been absolutely in the center of what we've experienced with COVID. But before we dive into that, I'm kind of interested in how you got to this position. Could you tell us a little bit about your leadership journey?
Well, it certainly has been a journey, Maureen. It certainly has. I think my career, when I look back, started when I was a child working in my parents' grocery store.
Oh my gosh.
They were entrepreneurs and had a family business and were very successful. And I started out in that working alongside my parents when I was in third grade. So, I got a lot of really good life experiences there as I look back, getting comfortable with people, understanding responsibility, dedicating, yourself to a schedule, watching my parents work really hard. So that was probably a great example right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then always worked, part-time jobs and things. But professionally, my first job was in the audit area, and you quickly got a lot of responsibilities in that field, and you became a supervisor shortly in a short order. The next time they hired a group, you were already
Right.
kind of in charge of some areas or that type of thing. So that really started it. And when I moved into nonprofit, I became, just advanced in the accounting area, but I started taking on more responsibility. When you're in a nonprofit, no matter where you are, you have no limits. There's so many needs and so few resources that there's a lot of opportunity for growth. And I really excelled in that, I think, by picking up other areas like human resources and IT and facilities and, sometimes development. So a lot of that type. So I had opportunities there, and they really continued to Masonic Home when I was the chief financial officer there for a decade. And then, as I say, against all odds, they, gave me that opportunity for CEO.
Yeah, so that's a very traditional organization. So you've kind of, I would guess, broken some glass ceilings there. Would you say that's true?
It is. I think I'm not the first woman, but certainly, there hasn't been many.
Right.
So I think either between my history with Catholic Charities for many years, as well as my history with the Masonic Home, I do have a tendency, and also in accounting and the CPA firms. They're all fairly traditional environments, and somehow I've been able to excel in those, and I've been very fortunate.
So I'm interested in what you just said. They've all been very traditional. What have been those little things along the way that kept you with it?
I'd have to go back and attribute it a lot to my mother, watching her work alongside my father that many years ago. And she was a lot younger than my dad. So when the hours had to be long, they were 7 days a week, 7 in the morning till 11 at night, she would actually get my dad to go home. And so she would work longer sometimes than my dad because of their age difference. And so I've always watched a strong woman work. And so I think part of my ability to excel in the traditional roles has been the fact that I just never question too much.
Right.
I just assume that if you work hard enough, you'll progress and you will move on. And I think that has been true. I think it's helped me kind of confirm for me if I'm in the right environment. I've tested it a number of times,
Right.
and I think even though they've been traditional, I haven't allowed that to limit me, and I haven't allowed that to limit them.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I do all I can to show my talents and my strengths and hope that we're matching up and hoping that I am what they're looking for.
Right. So I love what you said about your mom, and it sounds like a role model or maybe even a mentor. Have you had others along the way, or have you been able to serve in that role, or is that?
I think a lot of my my bosses would probably say that they have been mentors. I hope I have been one for others, and I've tried to be, whether they be women, men,
Right.
Older people, younger people. I have certainly been willing to share my experiences and encourage people, because I don't think in our world we get enough encouragement. I think in general, whether we're students, whether we're professionals or just trying to do well in an environment, I just don't think in general we get enough encouragement. For some reason, people are always trying to tell us about the barriers and, that kind of thing. And we need to understand that, everybody succeeds every day with hard work and talent and resources.
Right. That's a great message that we all need to remember. I always think about how, telling the people that are important in your life that you love them. It's like they might know it, but they need to hear it, right?
That's right.
So encouraging the people around you, telling them they're doing a great job, what they mean, how important they are.
And encourage them that they can do it, whatever it might be
Right.
is hard or
Right.
difficult or takes a number of steps or whatever. You can do that.
Right.
We can do it. We can
Right.
figure this out,
Sounds like passing the CPA exam, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Need a little.
Exactly.
Need that push behind you, right? The
Yeah.
encouragement behind you to know
Yes.
you can do it.
Yes.
So with your career, I know that you've certainly learned a lot of leadership lessons, but over the last 18 months, you've had to face life and death. You've had to lead people through something that I know you've never expected. I'm guessing you've never expected.
Definitely.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the lessons that you learned or that maybe were amplified over the last 18 months?
Sure. I think, you're exactly right. None of us understood what we were getting into when this pandemic began. But I will say that in a retirement community at the time where over half the deaths were occurring, it was undoubtedly the most scary time of my career. But it didn't frighten me in a way that froze me, thank goodness. And I don't know, it just made me realize how very important everything I did, how much it mattered. And so it really gave me a heightened sense of urgency, a heightened sense of using every skill that I have ever learned in my career. And I think I got into some zone, some gear, and I stayed there. And thank God for that. But it took a lot of lessons. Thinking ahead and planning. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends on how people look at it. I looked and I read as much as I could read during that time. I was watching all the news channels. I knew there's a lot of people that think there's not a lot of truth in the news, right? But there has to be some level of truth there. So even if I took half the deaths away, there was way too many. Right. And even if there were many in the retirement community settings, nursing homes, we were inundated
in
at
our
that
own
time.
Community, right?
Yes, in our own community. And we were very early in our own community, extremely early. So there wasn't a lot of lessons out there to learn. It was sort of a baptism by fire at that time. So we did a lot of great things at that time, and we just kept listening and learning and acting. And it was an everyday decision-making event. we got together, a key group, infection control task force got together, and we just examined everything that was going on around us and tried to figure out what was real symptoms, what were, at that time, just like it is now with children, there's a lot of symptoms like cold. And, when you start taking people's temperature 3 times a day, you don't even know what their temperature normally would be. There's a lot of things with seniors that cause your temperature to go up. There's a lot of symptoms that are similar to other things. So there was a lot of concern, some warranted, some not, and it was hard to discern exactly what you should be worrying about and what you shouldn't. Right. But we were worrying enough for everything, and just making a lot of decisions early on. We were early with a lot of our decisions,
okay.
And I think in that regard, they served us well.
Right.
Did a lot of thinking, a lot of planning ahead, and then personally, I think what I realized early on was that I had to keep my exercise and my self-care.
Well, that's what I was wondering about with this sustained level of even just watching the news,
yes.
Taking all that in, everyday decisions. How did you take care of yourself?
I found the time. I'm a morning person, and I committed it. I just said that's something I can't drop. Right. And it was really important time for me because when you've got that time to yourself, it really allows you the opportunity to work things through in your head. And I worked out a lot of problems and a lot of new ideas in the mornings. And it would be like, it's just like they say, you've been thinking, doing, and when you give yourself that free time,
right,
that your brain will help you. Right. And I think I was blessed with a lot of ideas during those mornings. Right. So that was very helpful. I just tried to think of the worst before my staff could think of the worst. I tried to think of the next COVID area that we might have to use. What's the next worst thing that we could be facing? What happens if we get low on PPE? And that helped, I think, my staff not have to tell me the bad things, their bad worries. I don't think they could articulate right. some of their concerns. I started to articulate some of those,
right.
and I think it took some of the pressure off us as a team, because if I was already expecting worse things to happen, they didn't have to let me down by telling me what
right.
was going to
right.
happen.
Right,
So I think that was helpful. I've always tried to place myself in other people's shoes. I think that served me well. When you try to put yourself in the shoes of our residents, the shoes of our staff, the shoes of our board, the shoes of our families, it helps guide you in a lot of good ways.
Right.
And the communication started very early on, and it was early and often. And I do think that was another huge piece of our getting through this.
The communication?
Yes, because we told what we knew. I was always honest up front. I told what we knew. I told what we didn't know.
Right.
And we had an awful lot of board support, and a board chair that's a doctor, and he's very, very well known. So I had a lot of good support.
Right.
And the communication helped, because there was a lot of times when we were not available outside of the community. People were locked down. We didn't have visitors. There was a lot of that time. And so some of our residents, unless I gave them information, they wouldn't know what was going on around them,
right.
Too much.
Right.
So that was a blessing, because, like I said, if you don't give them the information, they're going to find it in
right.
other sources.
Right,
and they're
right
not,
or wrong. Right?
Yep, that's right. So I guess that's a lot of, those are a lot of the things that I think that I've put into place.
Right.
And then just really being present every day among the residents, among our staff, on the campus, with the families, available.
Right.
By phone,
right.
by email. There was always every communications to ask for suggestions if they had any, to send them to us. And it was really it worked out from that perspective. For the first time in my career, I didn't hear any complaints about communications.
Well,
so
that's amazing, right? Because that's one of the first things that...
It is, isn't it? It's a common complaint that a lot of people have, right. wherever their environment might be. They don't ever feel like they have enough information, right?
Well, I like what you said too about you told them what you knew and you didn't know. So just to be upfront, we don't know this, and
That's right.
at least it doesn't leave minds turning and wandering.
That's right.
So
And
is there a? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
now, I was just going to say, and the one thing we just continue to reiterate was that we were doing our best. We were literally doing our best every day,
Right.
and I think that showed through.
Right. Right. Was there a particular moment or a story that you just remember forever during this last 18 months?
Oh, gosh, there's been a lot of things that have gone on. I wonder sometimes if I think back, if it will feel like I was really there, or if it was some kind of we can call it a dream. Sometimes it felt like a nightmare.
Right.
But I do wonder when I think back sometimes if I'll actually feel like it wasn't real. But I do, a lot of the walks that I gave across the campus, many times I intended to be a benefit to the residents, because I wanted them to get the communication and have a quick opportunity to question me about something that they may not understand. So I started walking the campus after those. And I think what happened to me during that time was that I was trying to be a resource to them and a support to them. And what happened was they ended up being a support to me.
Right.
Because when they would come out and talk to me, they didn't really have questions. They really just wanted to thank me for my leadership and for, keeping them safe. And of course, I was just one person of a team, but it meant the world to me during that time. It was very inspirational and very, very supportive.
Well, you had to make yourself physically present, like you said, to give and receive that.
Yeah,
So
good point.
that's awesome.
Good point.
So to turn to a different topic
Sure.
quickly, you have been a major player in our recent diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And back last year, when you were the chair-elect, our chair of the board, Henry Davis, asked you to step up and lead the council. And I know you had a particular reaction to that request.
Yeah.
And could you tell us just a little bit how you felt with that?
Sure. Henry's a great leader, and obviously no one could know more about the topic than him. And at the same time, there was a lot going on in our world, a lot of criticism about people that hadn't done things correctly, had made wrong remarks, had done whatever, just hadn't done what people thought they should have done. Right? It was a tough time, and I remember telling Henry, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't think I know enough of this, but I know you shouldn't lead it. You're the chair, so I'm happy to help you, but I need you to know that I'm not, this perfect person for this. And I said I believe that we're all flawed. I believe that we all have room to grow, and and there was some things that we discussed about what was going on in our world at the time that I agreed with and didn't agree with. And he was so supportive of me, and he basically said, "Anne, that's all. You're who we need to do this."
Right.
So he gave me the confidence to step up. I didn't feel very diverse.
Right.
Back in my original early days, I was probably considered diverse as a woman in the field. But I don't feel that as much that way today.
Right.
Right.
So while you were experiencing your career challenge, you had a little push in a totally different way.
Yeah. But it really helped me, I think, because, at the home we have a very diverse employee base. And I think it was very helpful to me. I think the world of employees, I think we need employees from all walks of life. And everyone is trying, I think all of us are trying to do the same thing. We're trying to live a good life. And we need financial resources to do that, usually, to raise a family, to keep a house, to be able to eat, to utilities, all of the health care, all those things are part of a healthy life. And so we need to do the best we can with with all that.
So you've gone from, or you went from being uncertain that you were the right person to lead this brand new council to leading the charge on $100,000 fundraising campaign. That, to me, that's quite a leap and a progression in a very short time. And you are no joke when it comes to this. I really just love the fire that you have for it. But tell us a little bit about how you went from that, I'm not sure if this is, if I'm the right person, to really putting yourself out there in front of a lot of other people.
Well, you know, I, like so many of my peers and the other members that we have as part of the Virginia Society of CPA, many of my CPA friends that I've worked with over several decades, you know, we've all benefited greatly from our profession. It has most likely been one of the most important things in our life, in our personal, professional, financial, all those successes, I think, have been impacted greatly by the profession that we chose. And so I think everyone should have that opportunity. And if we've got a part of our society that is unaware of this wonderful profession, then we are obligated to be sure we do all we can to share the benefits of this wonderful profession with them. Right. And I understand that we've made great progress with women. I've watched it. But we have not seen that same progress with Black students and Black CPAs. And so I feel very strongly that we have an obligation to share that information. And no better time than with the centennial. And I think when I started thinking about the centennial and what a wonderful window this was, you only get, you know, once to honor a centennial, right?
And that centennial is for the first Black CPA in the U.S.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So it falls in this year. And so I think, you know, things just work out. Right. And I think it was that coupled with a gift that someone made of $1,000. And I started, you know, as an accountant, I started trying to figure out, you know, could I raise $100,000 in the centennial year? I thought it would be quite something. And then I thought, $1,000, do I know 100 CPAs? And I do. And I know, and most of them have done much better than I've done in my career. So I thought I could reach out to those and see if I could encourage them to help me and to help Virginia to make a gift to help scholarships for Black students, Black aspiring CPAs, to make a difference in our community and our state.
What I love about this initiative and your personal touch to it is that not only are you going to raise money for students, but you are having conversations with these CPAs about this topic.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the $1,000. No. It's about opening their mind or answering questions or even having some challenging discussions that who knows where it'll go, but that's where this will move, is through the conversations. It's not just the checkbook.
Good point.
It's the conversation. And that's what I feel like you're bringing to this along the way. So it really is, it's not just a mailer in the that you drop in. It's not an email solicitation. It's personal discussions.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I just feel like I've been so blessed in my life. And I know that this crowd that I've worked with over the years that have helped me and bring me along has been blessed as well. Right. And, you know, we do have an obligation to give back and to leave this place better than we found it. And it's not necessarily, you know, whatever you give. I just use that example because I can do the math pretty easy. Right. $1,000, 100 people. But that's just because I like the math. But any amount would be so important.
Absolutely.
Right? And whatever we do, and then we're so thrilled because it's in the name of the first Black Virginia man and CPA and the first Black woman CPA, and it's the Duke Harris Scholarship.
Right. Yes, right? Yes.
So it's a way to honor that here in our state, and also be part of this centennial. of the United States.
So, Anne, we've covered a lot of ground. Before we wrap up, I just have one last question. So you've had quite a year with the pandemic, with leading this charge, now being the chair. What do you do for fun?
Wow. Well, the good news is that I have always loved my job, and I have always loved my volunteer work. So that has really been a blessing for me. And that's allowed me to raise 4 boys while I've worked. I'm now, involved with my 2 new grandchildren. And about 30 years ago, we took a leap and got a place on a lake in Virginia, and we spend a lot of time there.
Just really unplugging with nature and your family.
Yeah. And I think it's been a huge part of how we've been able to manage as a family, how I've been able to manage as a working mother professional, and to keep, a good perspective.
Right. So, are you a fisherwoman?
No, I'm more of a reader and a quiet.
Look at the beautiful view.
Yes, I probably cook a little more down there than I do at home.
Is there anything you like to cook?
Oh gosh, I guess I'm a big sweets
person. Okay.
Oh, yeah. My German chocolate cake is a pretty renowned.
Nice.
Cheesecakes, things like that, crab quiche, stuff like that.
So. Wow. Well, you know what? Give me that address. I'll come for a visit. So, Anne, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for your time today. It's just really been a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. And I consider it an honor and a privilege to be not only in my role as a CEO of the Masonic Home, but also the chair of the Virginia Society of CPAs.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite streaming service and stay tuned for our next episode. Thanks.